Hey guys, it's Jeff and welcome to today's video. So today we're going to talk about the RadMission. It's the brand new e-bike by Rad Power Bikes. But just before we get into that, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can get all my content. I post a new vlog every Friday and a new music video every Sunday. Just before we talk about the RadMission though, I just want to take a couple seconds to give you a bit of background information about this video, maybe help frame the discussion so you better understand where I'm coming from, what my experiences are, and maybe help you understand sort of where the opinions I'm going to have come from and why I may think certain things for certain reasons. The first thing I want to mention is I'm not affiliated or sponsored by Rad in any way. I didn't get any review unit or anything like that, so I don't have a first-hand experience with the RadMission at all. Everything I'm going to talk about in this video is just based off of the website specs and pictures and things like that, other reviews in certain situations. Also, it's important to mention I'm from Canada, so I'm going to be talking about the Canadian spec bikes, and the US spec and the European spec bikes are a little different, so I'm not really going to be talking too much about that. Also, for those of you that don't know me, I'm the current owner of a 2019 Rad Rover. It was my first e-bike, and really it's the first bike that I've got seriously into. I've ridden it for about 2,500 kilometers in the last 2 years, and that is the gist of my experience with e-bikes. I didn't try really any others. I didn't get a lot of experience in riding bikes before that. I don't consider myself an expert, maybe an early enthusiast, but anyway, hopefully that helps you frame and understand where I'm coming from. Other things that are important to understand about this video is I live in a small town, so there's not a lot of urban riding to do around here. Most of the trails that we have are usually dirt or gravel, some pavement here and there, but most of the time you can pretty much get where you need to go without ever getting off of gravel or dirt. There's not a lot of pavement riding that you have to do if you don't want to. And with my Rad Rover, I've been mostly doing the kind of dirt and gravel riding. I try to stay off the pavement as much as possible, just to avoid prematurely wearing down my tires. But of course, I have to do some city riding every now and then. And now with COVID, the situation is kind of changing. The city is really pushing the cyclists more towards the inside of the city on the pavement and things like that. They're shutting down bike trails to allow for more pedestrian space because they want to keep people distant. As things are progressing throughout the summer and throughout the COVID situation, I'm finding myself more and more riding in the city. That really did kind of change my vision. When the RadMission was announced, the COVID situation wasn't as far along as it is now, and there weren't as many of these steps that the city had taken to push us into the city, and so I really wasn't all that interested in the mission. But then the situation is changing, is giving me a new lease on this whole situation, and I'm starting to really more grasp and understand what the mission is all about. So I guess we can talk about the mission a little bit. As I said earlier, it's a brand new bike. It's a budget-oriented bike, so it has really little options built into it. It's a 500 watt motor, the same as the Rad Rover. It's no suspension, no derailleurs, basic Tektro-mechanical brake, a little smaller battery, so it's a 10 amp hour instead of 13 amp hour that the other Rad bikes get. Battery is a little smaller, a little lighter. Everything they've done for this bike was really oriented towards taking that weight and that price down. So they had to make a couple of compromises, and I guess that's really what I want to talk about in this video. I'm going to cover first what I really like about the bike, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what I don't like so much about it. And at the end, I'm going to talk about the type of riders that I think are really going to benefit from a bike like this, and hopefully you guys will find this video interesting. So as for the things I like about the RadMission, the first thing that I really like about the bike is just the weight of it. It's 50 pounds, so it's about 20 pounds lighter than the Rad Rover and pretty much just any other bike in Rad's lineup. Having a smaller and lighter bike is really advantageous on two fronts in my opinion. The first thing is if you want to carry things upstairs and things like that, I think a Rad Rover is really hard to bring in and out of the house. If you live in an apartment, it's even more complicated. At 50 pounds, it's a lot more manageable, so I think that's a really nice thing that they've done. And the other thing that I've always suffered from with my Rad Rover, and I think that the RadMission is really great about that, is that this Rad Rover is kind of a hard bike to carry around. Like if you want to bring it in a car or something, you need very specialized bike racks to do it. With the RadMission at 50 pounds with a battery on, and even less if you take off the battery, it means you can pretty much put it up on any roof rack or any bike rack that you can find. And to me, that's a huge plus because my car, as I mentioned in previous videos, isn't all that well suited to having anything but a roof rack on it. And now that the RadMission is out, I'm finally able to consider purchasing a bike that I can considerably put on the top of my car. So I think that that is a very good plus. Another thing that I really like about this new bike is just the design of it, the way it looks. I like the shape of the frame. I like the color schemes, especially the blue and orange ones. I think it's really, really nice. In one of my previous videos, I actually mentioned that I wish Rad offered more color options, and they actually did that with the Mission, so I think it's super cool. I like it just how pure it looks. When you think of Rad City, for example, it's a city bike, but it's got a lot of stuff thrown on it, and I think it looks a little ungainly. I think it looks a little overdone, but the RadMission is just really, really pure. Like it's a simple triangle frame, no suspension, no nothing. I really like the straight handlebar. So the typical Rad bikes have this like curved bar with a little riser in it. It's pretty practical, but the Mission seems to have this little wider and straight bar that looks a little more modern. And the way that the bike has the light integrated in the top of that headlight, I think it looks really cool. It's almost like a cafe racer type motorcycle thing, and I just think it looks really, really nice. So that's another thing that I like about it. And last but not least, the other thing that I really like about this bike is the tire situation. So the dimensions are pretty cool. They're 27.5 by 1.95 inches. So it's a fairly common city riding type dimension. And the thread on it looks to be pretty cool. It's got this really nice thread that I think will give it good grip in the pavement, in the rain and things like that. But it has a little bit of that more dual purpose thread on it that I think will allow people to ride on packed dirt and maybe even a little bit of gravel. So in a gist, that's kind of what I really like about the bike. Now if we get into the things that I don't really like about this bike, there aren't that many, but there are two major pain points that I think are going to be kind of a problem with this bike, or at least that I'm concerned about, and we'll have to see once the bike releases in October and the reviews start coming in what that ends up being. The first thing I don't really like about it is that it doesn't have a display, so I understand why they did it. They wanted to keep the prices down, and it makes sense that they didn't do it, so they have this really compact controller on the left side of the handlebar where you can adjust your pedal assist and your light and, you know, turning it on or off basically, and there's a little battery indicator on there, but that's really minimalistic. I like to have the display on a Rover. I like to have my speed, not that it's really all that important, but I just like it for the hell of it. What I find more annoying about not having that screen is that you lose your odometer. I like on the Rover that I know how much mileage I've done with the bike, not only because it's a good motivator for me, but also because it gives me an idea of the wear that I should be expecting. So when you're just riding out and the bike doesn't really keep track of how much mileage it's done, if you get some issues with it or you're thinking about maintenance, it's more of a guessing work, whereas with the odometer, you really know what the bike is at. Something I don't really like. I wish they had put the display in it. It can't be that expensive, but anyway, they decided not to do it, and I can understand why. My other concern about this bike is the single speed gearing, and I know the Rad Runner has got the same kind of gearing, and it's probably okay, but a lot of the reviews I've seen seem to be coming from the US, where you guys have the 750 watt motor, whereas we have the 500 watt in Canada, and it's the same basic 500 watt motor that I have in my Rad Rover. Where I start to have concerns is that bike, even if it's a little heavier and it has more, you know, drag because of the larger tires and everything, it pretty much needs this crawler gear. Like, it's very hard to pedal up of a steep hill. Pretty much every ride I do, I need the crawler gear at least once. And looking at the RadMission that doesn't have a crawler gear, it has just this like final drive single speed system. I'm concerned that I would pretty often have to get off the bike and push it, because I doubt that the motor would be able to compensate for that. So that's something we'll have to see, but that's at least something that I have concerns about. So I'm really looking forward to see when this comes out, see with the smaller tires and the lighter weight, just how it will perform with a 500 watt motor. But that's something I'm kind of anxious about. So here are the two kind of riders that I think will really benefit from a RadMission. The first kind of people that I think will really be into that kind of bike and get really deep on that is the more like budget conscious city riders. At $13.99 Canadian or 1,000 US, it's a fairly cheap bike, and I mean, for an e-bike, it's an incredible value. I think a lot of people that were kind of on the fence about e-bikes at that price point are going to be like, yeah, you know what, I'm going to give it a try. Even if it's a more basic bike with less features, at that price point, I think it really compensates for a lot of that and allows people to get into the bike. Another reason why I think budget conscious riders are going to be interested in that kind of bike is that the less complex bike makes it less likely to break. You don't have a suspension fork to worry about, you don't have the derailleur, and you have very basic brakes, and so there's really not that much that can go wrong with it. Also, if you're riding around the city and you leave your bike parked outside, I think leaving a $2,000 bike outside might be a little more worrisome than leaving a $1,300 bike outside. The other kind of people that I think are going to really dig the new RadMission, and that's the category that I find myself in, and that's kind of why I was making this video in the first place, because I'm really more convincing myself that I'm going to buy one at this point than anything else. It's for people who want to have a backup bike. So in my case, I have the Rad Rover. I do all of my riding with it. Occasionally when something goes wrong, either I have a flat or I break a brake caliper or whatever, I've been documenting all the issues I've had. Not that I've had that many, but every time I have some, I have to order in parts, so it gives a lot of downtime. Having a second bike for me would be a huge blessing, because it would allow me to basically never have any downtime. Also, having a second bike would allow me to spread out my tire wear a little more. So whenever I'm going riding in the city, you know, for groceries or just to do my errands or whatever, I could take the Mission, for example. And when I want to go on a more adventure kind of ride, I could take the Rover and not wear down my off-road tires as much on the pavement and things like that. So that's kind of another reason that I found was pretty interesting. One thing that I would think would be very interesting for people who buy it as a backup or secondary bike is, and that's not been confirmed yet, but if we can use the battery in that bike as a backup battery for the Rover, I think that's going to be pretty cool, because the battery is about $500, and having a second battery come with the bike is just nice if you want to go for a longer ride, for example, with your Rover. Also, if you already have a Rad Power bike of any description, you can use a special Rad code for $100 off of a second bike, so that's even $100 cheaper than the advertised price, so that's pretty cool. And as I said, for me, the fact that it's lighter allows me to carry it on the roof of my car, to me, is a huge advantage. So right now, I'm really thinking that I'm going to be getting a RadMission next spring and use it as secondary bike. Another advantage I can see is having two e-bikes, kind of nice whenever ever have someone over and we want to go for a ride, for example, I can just lend them the RadMission and take the Rad Rover or vice versa. So just for a really practical thing, and I think having 2 bikes is going to be a good plus for me. Anyways, guys, let me know in the comments below what you thought of this video, and I will see you on Sunday for my next music video. All right, peace.